This is a First and 10 Monday on Coaching Football with Brian Clee. In this First and 10 Monday, we're going to take a look at game planning to defend the full house tee. If you've not checked out my YouTube channel before, there's a link to a 7-part series for some concepts of defending against the tee. This is to celebrate a 1-year anniversary of my YouTube channel. Thanks to all the support out there. 176 subscribers, which is kind of neat. That's more than I guess I anticipated. Again, thanks for that support over the past year, and hopefully I can continue to put out some entertaining and educational content for coaches. Hopefully we can get more coaches discussing some football. It'd be great to have some guests on and do some mock game planning, so that way we continue to grow and get better as coaches. So as far as defending the tee, what we've had success with in the past is just running a straight odd front 5-0-5. It ends up against power. It lets our free safety get a read of that tight end immediately down blocking. Our 5 techniques, if we've got them coached up, they can still defend trap. Again, our safeties are going to get really good reads when they go run counter. We'll talk about the dive the dive play and fitting that, and how that's a little bit of an issue out of the 5-0-5. First, the power fit, play side, corner, he's got to make sure he matches that keep because he's the force player. The 9 technique, he gets that down block, squeezes it, and in the past we've had him spill and run the circle around that kick-out block by the halfback. 5 technique's going to flip his hips. He's the C-gap player. He's going to take on that double team, try and hold a point. That lets the free safety. He's got to confirm that tight end's down blocking and that halfback's kicking out, and he can start to fit in the alley. Because that tight end down block, that's going to trigger his fit a little bit faster. The 30 technique, that guard down blocks. If he's got an open window, he's going to take it, try and get a run through, and that makes that job of the 5 technique against the double team a little bit easier, because that tackle needs to come off, or that guard needs to turn up in the hole, and he eats up that guard's block faster. 0 technique has the double team going to flip his hips and play into that A gap. Backside 30 technique, he's keying that guard and that back. They're both going away, so he's going to step up and he's going to scrape and take first open window. So if for some reason his teammate doesn't take the run through there, but there's still a run to, he'll take it, or he'll continue scraping and become an overlap player. So that guard ended up wrapping up and took his teammate there. He ends up being the bonus guy, the free hitter actually in the alley if the other inside linebacker's already cut. Our 5 technique, we try to visually key that guard inside to try and hip pocket this. If we're playing straight up, though, most likely we'll be cut off by that backside tackle, and then we try our best to heel line pursuit, and then same thing out of our 9 technique. Our corner on the backside, he keys that back away. He's a slow flow cutback guy, and he is making sure that trap isn't actually a trap and it goes down. And then the deep safety here, he's got to stay in coverage because his tight end never hooks up. So that's how we fit the power. When we're fitting trap, a lot of things are similar. So the parts that are similar, 9 technique spilling, the kick out block, he doesn't know it's trap. The nose doesn't know it's trap. He's got a double team. The 30 technique on the backside, his guard's away, flows away. He's scraping over the top. He doesn't really know it's trap. That backside 5 technique, most likely again he's probably being cut by this guy, and that tackle's not necessarily releasing like that. Where the play gets different is right here at the point of attack. Obviously, that 5 technique has a down block. He is working to spill and make sure that ball bounces. Make sure he gets inside the kickout block. The 30 technique linebacker, he was downhill. He sees that window close with the color of his teammate's jersey. He's going to overlap, scrape a little bit outside, and he'd be fitting the running back as the ball spills. If he was downhill enough that the tackle blocks him, all of this is dirty. As that 30 technique scrapes for opposite A, he'd keep going, and hopefully we get that ball running completely sideways and making the tackle somewhere in C or D gap as the fullback doesn't hit it vertically. And again, really crucial here. Sometimes when that nose plays this double team real well, the fullback will bend back here, and that's where the corner as a cutback guy comes in big there for us. Counter, fit in the counter. So now it's very similar to the power fit above, except for we feel like we get an extra bonus guy. So that free safety's keying that tight end. That tight end goes away. He can know and become an extra linebacker on this side. And now we'll talk about this corner. He's got to make sure the keep isn't actually a keep. Draw that in on all these. And now we'll work right side to left side. 9 technique, we want him spilling this. We want the 5 technique holding up the C gap and taking that double team, flipping his hips into the outside. Nose has got A gap there. He's flipping his hips into that A gap, holding up the point. The 5 technique, again, he's probably going to get reached if we're just playing a straight nose 55 is what we call it. Our 9 technique, we are trying to hip pocket that tight end and follow this flat. Ignore this fake, because if I see his backside as the tight end, I go to strike him, I get no surface, and all I see is his backside. I'm going to hip pocket him, stay flat down the line, and find this counter back. And I should be visually keying as I go to strike. That tight end disappears, and my back also goes away. The ball's going away as that 9 technique back there. 30 technique, if there's a run through, take it. Backside 30 technique, guard away, back away, put your foot in the ground, scrape and overlap, fit off of my teammate. My teammate closes that window. I become the first guy really with a chance to tackle the spill. Corner's got to be careful here. He sees the back go away. He sees the fullback also go on the other side of the midline. That back's coming back. He needs to put his foot in the ground, and he becomes the 4th player here in our down safety. His tight end blocks down. His back is going away. Put my foot in the ground, redirect. And lastly, the dive play. So when we're asking our nose is a 0 technique, when we're asking him the 2 gap, his job is to knock the center back. That's really how he defeats the double team. He'll knock the center back. Let's go back to power here. He'll knock the center back. He'll get on a deeper layer than the down block by the guard, and he'll be able to slip off and play into the A gap there. Well, because of that, he's going to get reached. That's something you have to accept, being a coach that asks a nose or anybody on the defensive line to 2 gap. They're going to get reached. So when they run the dive play, it looks very similar to the trap play. The difference is they don't have a guard pulling, and instead of bending to the front side on trap, their dive play is going to hit the backside A gap of the flow of the play. So for that reason, our 30 technique linebacker needs to be an A gap fitter. When his guard comes straight at him, and we've got this call on, he knows he has to win to the inside to force that ball a little bit wider. And right now, everybody else involved in the play, because this is pretty quick hitting, this 30 technique linebacker, same thing. He's trying to get to that A gap and then be a bonus guy. Well, he's not going to get there for more than like a 3 or 4 yard gain. Really, his path to make a tackle is going to be more horizontal, which we don't love out of our linebackers, but that's the facts with this play and calling it with this front. This 5 technique, he's got that kick out block. He's going to work to constrict it. Right now, they got enough hats, especially since we're too high. We like too high because we get that cutback support out of our corner. It puts us in good position for some of their play action passing stuff that they do. But really what ends up happening is this corner ends up being the folding guy. You got to defeat the block either by that 5 technique or that 30 technique if they keep going back to this play. So as we all know, football's actually played with people. A couple things that factored into the game plan. And number one, we were coming off a week in which our secondary struggled a little bit to make consistent tackles, especially at first contact. They'd make a tackle for about a 1 or 2 yard gain, but then get run over slowly, and it would turn into consistent 4 or 5 yard gains when we spilled the ball. So we came into the game with the mindset of our 9 technique outside linebackers. Instead of spilling, we were going to try and force with them. We were going to try and set a hard edge and make sure the ball had to cut up, so that way our inside linebackers could get there and make the play, and we were counting on them to make the tackle. It's something different for us. Additionally, there's the analytics running into the game, a couple of things that really stood out that was unique for them. Specifically that year, they ran to the right 53% of the time, and it's because they were getting their dude, number 4. He had 39% of all their offensive touches. I believe 11 different guys that touched the ball in the games that we had scouted, and he had 39% of the touches. With any offense, defensively, when you're game planning, you need to take away their bread and butter plays, their top plays. So we need to make sure we're fitting up power, trap, counter, dive, and with the mindset of number 4 running power to the right, counter to the right. I forget if it was him or the other running back that was the 74-yard touchdown on a counter, but that was one of their big explosive plays. And then even though they only passed the ball 9% of the time, 3 of their biggest, most explosive plays of the season on what we had scouted up was play action passing, a post wheel. We'll talk about matching that in a little bit. A switch pass, so standard keep pass, and where they got something going in the flag and something on the arrow route. So fitting the run game. What I had schemed up with our coaches to kind of help with that a little bit was we were going to run what we call a nose 45 angle. So what that means is we got a 4 technique set to the strong side, and we determined number 4 was going to be the strength that week. So if we called nose 45 angle, we put the 4 on that side, and he is angling away from that call. So the call would be right, angle. That tells everyone they're working to the left. The 5 technique's already there on the left, so that's our movement on all these fronts. And I felt like that would give us a chance of matching where number 4 was going to go, and that would also let us be really sound against trap, and it let our linebackers be single gap backers. We're instead of 2 gapping anybody, we were trying to single gap the front and still stay 7-man and be able to play too high. So we had that cutback support out of our secondary. So fit and power. I got power on drawn up here, so all they're doing, instead of a double team on the 5 technique, they're gonna base out on the 9. 9 and 5, they're in D gap and C gap. As they feel that kick out block and the flow of the play, they're gonna eventually try to squeeze and work back inside. The 30 tech play side linebacker, he wants to come downhill as quickly as possible, as tight as possible, and hopefully collision that guard in the backfield if he's really pulling his trigger quick. 0 technique nose is in A gap. The backside 30 technique, guard away, back away, scrape to opposite A. Opposite A is closed. His buddy is fitting somewhere. He's going to fit opposite of him. So if he fits how we coach it up as tight as possible, he's going to be in between the guard and the lead halfback. We are sort of a gap short, but with that free safety, keying that tight end to near back and that corner keying the near back, both those guys are blocking very clearly, so we can start to get support out of those guys if we don't straight up defeat a block with the 5 technique, the 30 technique, the backside 30. They can get that ball if it spills right there and kind of hits the outside B gap essentially. And the last part of the play that's really, really helpful, that 4 technique, if he hit pockets that guard and if he runs by the fullback, which is not a good thing, he might be able to run the play down from behind if he can confirm that fullback doesn't have the ball. But we're counting on him taking that fullback down, which lets our corner keep shuffling for cutback reasons. Backside 9 technique can heel line pursue, and this guy, the backside defensive back, has to stay in coverage there. On trap, we get a down block out of our 5 technique. He's working as flat as possible, looking to spill the trap. Make sure that ball bounces wider. The nose is going to make sure that ball bounces wider by being staunch against the double team in the A gap. 9 technique was not spilling. I'm so used to drawing him up spilling. So he's forcing that. He's still constricting space and squeezing down, but he's collisioning that with his inside arm is what we had him coached up to do. The 30 technique linebacker steps downhill. His teammate's color crosses his face. He'll play the spill there. 4 technique, try and hip pocket this. Meanwhile, on offense, they're trying to cut him down with that backside tackle. 30 technique, guard away, scrape away, find the first open window. I thought we were really, really sound against trap. And again, if for some reason all this gets really messy, they do get the 4 technique cut off. The fullback sees this and decides to cut this back. That's where our corner ends up fitting on things. Counter. Now counter, we're potentially a little bit weak on counter going back to the offensive left, our defensive right. So we'll go from point of attack. 9 technique. If he forces this, he's taking that on as early as possible again, but with his left shoulder, his inside arm, and he's going to force the ball there. Our 4 technique. Now we're expecting to get some wash. I don't think we're going to be able to get the tight end to block onto him. And looking back at film, that tight end's going to be able to continue. We might be able to get some penetration as we feel this on our outside shoulder at 4 technique. We could try to run the hoop, run the circle, and get back out, and maybe knock off one of the pullers, or at least the tight end pulling from the backside. Kind of same situation here. This nose steps towards that guard goes to pull. I'm trying to run the circle, and again, maybe create penetration that knocks that tight end off his course. I'm probably not going to be strong enough and fast enough to knock this guard off his course. So linebackers, I see guard down block. I'm going to look to fill. If my A gap closes up, I can be a scrape guy, and I'm be fitting inside of the pullers. Inside of the pullers, inside of that 9 technique there. 30 technique linebacker steps up, guard away, back away, scrape away, fit off of my teammates, find the first open window. And then 9 technique is, we still had him hip pocketing here, because this is a very clear physical read off of that tight end. He's pulling away. I see his backside. I see my back. Instead of coming to kick me out, he's pulling away. In practice, I thought we were ready for defending the counter with that. Free safety, he sees tight end go away. He becomes the extra linebacker. The deep safety on the other side, he sees the tight end down block. Now, if that tight end doesn't hook up, he's got to be a little slower to trigger and make sure he actually hooks up. So if that maybe that tight end hooks up on the first inside linebacker there, now I can put my foot in the ground and go become part of the fit. And counter in that game didn't end up giving us problems. The dive play, thought we were more sound against this, because that 30 technique linebacker, instead of us 2 gap in the nose, which means he's responsible for both A's, and the 30 tech linebackers need to both be responsible for fitting inside the guards just in case we got that dive. Now we know B gap, A gap, A gap went inside, B gap with the 4 technique. We've got the inside gaps taken care of. 9 technique, in theory, can shuffle down and become an extra fitter, cutback guy out of our corner. We're in really good shape for that dive play when we're running nose 45 angle. The other defensive call that we had ready to go was nose 55 pinch. The side we sent the nose to, I felt really good. If they ran power to our right, we were in good shape. Our 40 technique linebacker be our C-gap fitter. We'd read the pull and the back away with the 30 technique, get him across. Trap, to me, to go into that side was not going to be an issue. And then counter, we were going to be able to keep the linebackers clean, get back over the top to redirect the counter. And then the dive play there, which they didn't draw everything in. The dive play there, so if they ended up going dive to the backside or whatever, the quarterback's opening up, the power fake by the other back. I thought we were going to be in pretty good shape on those plays going to the defensive left, the offensive right. Going back to the defensive right, the offensive left. So when number 4 was not getting the ball, that's where I felt like we were having some issues with our fit, especially as the game went on. Ultimately, what happens if we're pinching? So we got the 5 techniques. I'm trying to get that tight end to think he needs to help double team. And when we pinch, if that tight end's good, he's coached up, he's going to stay on his track. That 5 technique gets washed. Maybe we'll get penetration and him running the circle, and maybe he knocks the pulling guard off his path a little bit. But that tight end's going to be able to continue to work down. And our 30 technique linebacker is A-gap responsible when we got this on here. That's the open gap. He is stepping up to go fit that A-gap. If he sees that guard and all this flow across his face, he's going to try and redirect. Well, by that time, that tight end potentially has him pinned, unless he hits that run through real hard right away, real fast. 9 techniques boxing. We got our movement with our 0 and our 5 technique. Our 5 technique's got a chance of hit pocketing, but if he sees that fullback at all, that fullback doesn't get tackled maybe by our nose, he's not going to be able to hit pocket this all the way over to the play side. The 40 technique linebacker, he's still keying his guard. He gets guard away. He's able to scrape. But now, because we're sending the nose, we're not 2-gapping the nose, that 40 technique linebacker, that guard might be able to pick him off, or at least slow down his pursuit as he scrapes and overlaps. So we're a little bit weak in the C-gap. Instead of asking our nose to 2-gap, which is my preferred way of playing an odd front here, we're kind of having that 30 technique linebacker. He's A-gap, but he's also got C-gap over there, and he can't play both simultaneously. He's in a bit of a fit. Trap, not as big an issue. A-gap fitter, if the 5 technique gets all the way down there, he spills it. Now, instead of being an A-gap fitter, the 30 technique can scrape outside and essentially fit the outside of the A-gap, or we're starting to get to the B-gap, whatever you want to call it. The 40 technique linebacker, he's C-gap. If the flow comes at him, he gets that guard pulling away, scrape, and he becomes the extra overlap guy. We're forcing with the 9 technique there. We got our cutback support out of our corner still coming from this side. So trap, I didn't feel like was a big issue going back that way. Counter, similar overall to power. The big difference, like I've talked about multiple times, that safety, he sees that tight end pull away. We get a hip pocket out of the 9 technique. If that tackle's consistent, he's going to get the 5 technique cut off there. The nice part, the 5 technique, if he can defeat that cut block, he's going to be able to hit pocket because the fullback's going away. 30 technique linebacker, again, the same issue of he's A-gap responsible. He's also got the fullback coming right at him. He's got to make sure that fullback goes down. He's got to fit that A-gap with a ball fake coming right at him, because he's not going to know the difference whether or not he has the ball if you've ever seen any T-film. 5 technique might be getting washed. 9 technique, forcing it there. 40 technique linebacker, guard away. Now, again, he's got to get over top. He's got to defeat that guard block. If the guard slides off that 0 technique nose, but he becomes the extra fitter, the tight end is down. But if that tight end is not blocking the 5 technique, he feels that 5 technique gets washed by the offensive tackle. Again, the 5 technique's trying to run the circle there. That slows down the fit of our deep safety on that side, so he's not able to trigger quite as fast. But we should get the backside free safety coming over the top, so we end up having, they got 2 pullers coming. We match those 2 pullers maybe with 3 guys with the 40 technique, the free safety, and the backside 9 technique trying to hit pockets. So to counter that way was actually a little less of an issue than power in many ways. The dive play, the way we're fitting that up, again, we're single gap. So dive going on the other side like that had minimal chance of getting out. The nose is going to be right in the fullback's business right away. Even with the center blocking, our nose was going to win that if they ran dive to the offensive right. The offensive right, the defensive left. Coming back the other way, though, on the dive play, what we might have issues with was all right, they get all this gapped up, and that fullback has a little bit of vision. So as he gets that ball, and this 30 technique linebacker's pulling his trigger quick, and he's hitting the guard just a little bit short of the line of scrimmage, that offensive tackle maybe doesn't get the 5 technique sealed out, but starts to wash him down. Well, all of a sudden this edge gets a little bit short, and again we're having our 9 technique outside backers play force, so they're a little bit more vertical than normal, and instead of being flat as I'd like them to fit, there's just a little bit of a crease that their die play kept making it outside the backside C gap, really, bouncing all the way to C gap, and our corner would be making tackles for 4 or 5 yards. So that was a bit of an issue, both on the backside of nose 55 pinch, away from where we're sending our nose. So we sent our nose to the left. We're a little bit weak to the right because we're asking a lot out of that 30 technique linebacker now. He's A gap responsible, but we still got the C gap over there that we have to defend, and that was probably compounded by the fact that we're asking our 9 technique outside linebackers to be force players instead of spill players, where they squeeze that tight end's down block flat. Okay, what the game really came down to, what they got some very explosive plays off of, was what we call power ISO. Going into the game, it was only on 5% of their snaps. They ended up running at 15% of their snaps, and the issues that I alluded to with power to the weak side of our movement, that's where they really started to show up big time. So when number 4 wasn't getting the ball, if they're handing it to their other back, we're moving and we're leaving this C gap a little bit vulnerable. So 9 technique is forcing it. Again, we're trying to help our secondary out. Corner ends up needing really to become a fold player here to fit inside of that, and that causes issues because he's got to honor keep. It was still in the game. It was 9% of their actual calls was quarterback keep. 30 technique linebacker, he's A gap responsible because that 4 technique might get washed on occasion, even all right, trying to run the circle. Well, there's no pullers really to knock off their tracks anymore. The fullback is taking the place of the pulling guard on power ISO here, so that 4 technique isn't creating as much of an issue on any sort of penetration. 30 technique linebacker could get buried right there by the tight end, and then the backside 30 technique, after you recognize, all right, guard's not away, I'm a B gap fitter, and now my back's away, he's behind that guard's block with where our nose is moving. He's got the next guard's down block to deal with, and he's still got a lot of mess to get through, and ultimately that fullback potentially could lead up and seal him if he beats all that. So they put us in a little bit of a spot, and our play side 30 technique here did it all he could. Again, we moved, instead of our nose really being the 2-gapper in the front, we're kind of asking that backside 30 technique to be, and I don't think it's something that we asked the kid to do too much, and that's on us as coaches. That's something, when you're looking back at game plans and why they weren't successful, I mean, they weren't. We look at the scoreboard, it doesn't lie. We're asking that kid to do too much. So, and then same thing, all right, they start going that way, or they've hit a power, number 4, we still fit it up, but he hits a power for 8-10 yard gain, 8-10 yard gain, and then we maybe stop it finally. Well, they're going counter back the other way, so we might be in a slant call to him, and because of that, the C gap, again, the C gap on the backside of that movement is a little bit vulnerable, especially because we weren't spilling with the 9 technique. He's forcing there. All right, the 4 technique, again, might be able to run the circle and get back into the play late, but he might get washed too if that tackle and that tight end are doing a good job with their double team. That tight end slides off. That 30 technique linebacker, again, we had a kid, one of the 2 linebackers, he's inches away from making a tackle for a 2-yard gain, but his position to make that tackle, as much as that was a missed tackle, that's on us as coaches of not giving him an easier run fit, being A-gap responsible. He sees flow and he puts his foot in the ground, redirects. Well, he's still got that fullback coming through to potentially deal with. He might have to get through that tight end's down block if our 4 technique doesn't eat up some of that tight end's down block. The 30 technique linebacker on the backside, he's got to put his foot in the ground and again defeat maybe both guards on down block paths. And just that C gap ends up vulnerable there. And with the 4 technique, if he's getting washed and the tight end can continue down, the free safety's got to be really slow with this trigger. And the corner's not in a great position to fold because he's got to honor the potential to keep, which is again 9% of the offense. So that power ISO, them going from running it 15% of the time coming into the game, running it 5% of the time coming into the game, and they ran it 15% of all their snaps, and I believe they got about 160 some yards on it. That ended up being a solid over 1/3 of their offensive output for the night. And if you can do the math, that's not a good night defensively for us. They're 400 plus yards on the field. And then matching their play action game, they did not run what we call regular key pass, where the tight end has the flag and the back has the arrow to the flat. We match both those ultimately the same. Textbook, our corner, you should see that back's a little bit wider. Sink, play underneath the flag, break up on the flat when the ball's actually thrown. Free safety's keying tight end to near back. That tight end blocks down. He's going to be slow to trigger. As that tight end blocks down, he should be picking up visual of the running back. That running back goes outside our 9 technique. Our 9 technique's not able to force it. He should put his foot in the ground, and he's playing high and inside. Really, we don't want him drifting too far inside at all, because if that guy goes real flat, that becomes the other safety's job. So he's going to play high and inside, be on top of that potential flag route, and we just didn't get that free safety repped up enough. They got a touchdown off the switch pass. The free safety, I swear his eyes went to that back, exactly like he's coached to do, and he stood there flat-footed, trying to figure out, was it play action or was it run, instead of just honoring the fact, hey, this guy's going vertical, I gotta run with him. And our corner, we didn't have him. This is again on us as coaches. We didn't have him disciplined enough. He's playing around some games, trying to look like he's gonna go, and the back runs right by him. He doesn't even collision the back, and they end up getting an easy score off of it. The last thing matching up, post wheel. We never saw this in game, and I think a big part of it is when you look at any sort of scout tape, any sort of scouting, they were playing a cover 1 team, and when that tight end ran that post, that actually pulled the corner. The corner melted with it, so the corner and the free safety against the team on film that they ran it against with success both doubled the post and left number 4 wide open on the wheel. So our match of that in practice, what we were trying to get our guys to do, he's keying that near back. That near back never really slows down to block and goes outside the 9 technique. Put your foot in the ground, play high and inside. The down safety, that tight end gets a clean release. I again want to play high and inside of that to take away the throwing window. So that was our game plan. And again, I really think when you're playing the T, if you're going to stay too high, you need somebody in the front to be 2-gapping. Normally that's been our nose. That can cause issues on fast hitting plays like dive. So we tried to change it up with some movement. Well, if you're staying too high, you're still asking one of your guys. You're asking one of your guys to sort of be a 2-gapper if you're staying too high, so that way you can have the cutback support is why we like it. Well, we're asking too much out of those inside linebackers. So those are some of the things that you always need to weigh and consider when you're putting together your game plans.
If you think it would be fun to participate in a 1st and 10 Monday in some way, shape, or form, whether that is you presenting an offensive formation or 2 and how you would go about game planning against how I would try to defend that, and I'm going to exchange some ideas about how we're going to game plan to defend that offensive concept and those formations, or if you want to flip that script and you want to have me present an offensive formation or 2 and some offensive concepts and how we're going to game plan for how you would go about trying to defend us, and you're exchanging your ideas about how to put together a defensive game plan to stop that. That'd be great. There's my contact information. Hit me up on Twitter, leave a comment down below, or shoot me an email.